everyone, and welcome. We are going over the more peppered moths, please. This is the answers for it. So at this time, you should have finished this activity, turned it in on Google Classroom. If you need to go back and do that, please do that. And then if you wanted to have both the video open and you're looking at this, if you need to toggle back and forth, pause the video to go back and forth, you can do that. But we want to go over the answers and make sure you had the best information. So here we go, going over the answers. I'm usually on this, people do pretty good, but just in case you had some questions. So first and foremost, life cycle of the peppered moth. Why are these moths called peppered moths? It's because their wings appear peppered with dark spots. What animals eat the peppered moth? So there's flycatchers, nuthatches, and the European robin. What is a lichen? It's a type of a small fungi or type of fungus. And also, as we're going over these, you might have like a slightly different variation, and you probably are correct. But as long as you've got pretty close to this, you're good to go. So like if you said fungus instead of small fungus, you're good. If you just had at least maybe one or two of these, that's fine. Okay. Number 4, what do the larvae of the moth eat? They eat the leaves of birch, willow, and oak trees. How do peppered moths spend the winter? They're in cocoons. Moths that have more dark spots than the average moth are called carbonaria or insularia. I believe this is the most correct answer. That's the one that people get the most of, but it does also mention the other one. Where was the first black form of the moth found? In the center of Manchester, and that's in England. What was the Industrial Revolution? It was when factories were built and run off of coal. So no, we're in this impact of pollution section. This is why the peppered moths had to adapt to a new environment. Amongst other factors as well. But what was causing these different colors in the moth? So chemicals in the smoke and their genetics were also helping to change what each generation of new moths as they were being born, what they looked like. What is natural selection? It's a change in a moth of being darker in color, at least for this example. Natural selection is just saying when an animal is best suited to its environment. So that's what it really, that's the big bit about it, is when an animal's best suited into its environment. In the case of the moth, it was being that darker color. Who suggested that peppered moths were an example of natural selection? Charles Darwin, as well as J.W. Tutt. What is industrial melanism? It's things that respond to natural selection. So then Kettlewell's experiments. What is an entomologist? It's a scientist who studies insects. How do scientists test theories? They make predictions and then they run tests. Write down one of Kettlewell's predictions is saying like the heavily polluted forests are going to have mostly dark peppered moths. Also saying like heavily polluted forest is going to have not many light colored moths. So you might have something a little bit, a variant of this, like the exact opposite wording, but just saying something about if it's polluted, you're going to have the darker moths. Number 16, dark moths were found in what parts of the country? Industrial cities that produced a lot of pollution. So it wasn't something that was being found in the country where there weren't really factories. It was in those industrial areas. On to the next one. Number 17, how did Kettlewell directly study the moth? He would place light and dark moths on various trees and just literally see if he could see them, because that was the easiest, is to go to their environment and which ones were the ones that were easiest to see or not see. So why did dark moths have a survival advantage? They literally blended in with the surroundings best. So if a bird is going to come along, they're going to look for the easy target, not the one that they can barely see. When Kettlewell recaptured the marked moths, what did he find? Is that when the ones that were in the polluted area, he collected double of the black ones, and where it was polluted, they collected about half of the white or the light colored. Just make that a little more clear there. Where did Kettlewell publish his findings? Scientific America. So then this, I have a percentage because that's from when I had played it, but the biggest thing is that your results are going to vary. In the light forest, you should have very few dark moths and a lot of light moths because The light moths are what blend in. In a dark forest, you should have more dark moth and less light moths because the dark ones are what's blending in. So, explain how the color of the moths increases or decreases their chances for survival. If they're matching the color of the forest, they have a better chance for survival. If they do not match the color of the forest, better chance of dying or being eaten. Explain the concept of natural selection using your moths as an example. So the moths that survived were the color of the forest. So those that moths that were literally the ones alive, able to reproduce. If a light moth is dead, it literally cannot reproduce. It cannot pass on its genes. But if it's like a dark moth that does survive, then it's able to pass on its genes because it's able to reproduce. What would happen if there were no predators in the forest? Would the colors of the moths change over time? Defend your answer. So your answer should probably be looking at that the proportions probably shouldn't necessarily change because there's nothing affecting it. You might be able to answer it very well in a different way, but in general, I mean, the moths, if nothing's forcing them to change their colors, you should have a pretty good mix of everyone. So let your science teacher know if you have any questions about this assignment or any of the questions that were on here, any of the answers. Otherwise, keep doing awesome things. Have a great day, guys. Bye.